I used to know a lot more about the history of the frigo vert, but really I think it's best for me to start in 1997 when I arrived there and got hired as the education coordinator. And that was it was a really beautiful little store, and it sold, very beautiful goods, and it was based in the idea of uh, of trying to have a meaningful relationship to product, trying to re-envision how a store is run and what a store means, and they did it in a really subtle and way that I felt was meaningful. Like they had a very specific buying policy. That any product that they bring into the store, they do a certain amount of research to understand the genesis of the product, if it was tied to a larger corporate entity, if the product was actually healthy or not healthy. They were very, very careful not to bring in competing brands, right? There's no reason to have this brand but not that brand, or have 4 different kinds of soy milk. So they really wanted to have an austere but meaningful selection of goods, local if possible. So everything that was in the store was a deliberate reflection of a value system and a dialogue, because there was a group of people who would sit down and talk about it. What do we want to have in the store? And customers would write down on their list things that they would like to see the store bring in, and they would consider it and reflect on it, and they would group together this deliberate selection of products. Not so austere that you couldn't shop there. You could do your shopping there. And it was at a time in Montreal in 1997 where you couldn't get soy milk in the Provigo. Tofu wasn't common in Montreal supermarkets in 1997, as odd as that might seem now. And I had just moved from British Columbia, and so I noticed right away that Montreal was several years behind where BC was in terms of the food selections and the natural products. So it was really exciting to find this little enclave that really valued that. And we did things like supermarket tours to deconstruct what was going on in supermarkets. And it was a really, really exciting time there. And we were located at 2130 Mackay. I think it's still there, in a little storefront. And just down the street, Campus Ministry offered a Mother Hubbard's meal. And those 2 things were pretty neat. And then we had volunteers that worked with the frigo vert who come in and do baking. And we would sell our baked goods there. And it would always be very exciting when Brian, who was one fellow from the community, would come in and do his baked goods. And everybody would know which day he'd come in and bake and buy up his banana bread, his delicious vegan banana bread. And so it was a very small but engaged community. The produce ordering was done. So you put in your order on the Thursday, and on the Monday it would arrive, and we'd have a team of volunteers sorting it, and everyone would come and pick it up within the same period of time. So we all got to know each other, and it was very human more than anything. It was managed as a store, though. There was a manager, and the manager reported to the board, and there was a very clear hierarchy. I was hired as the education coordinator, and I worked my till shifts, and there were very clear expectations about what I was supposed to do during my till shifts, and it ran like a store, most importantly. So that was in 97. I worked there September 97 until May 98. Thereafter, the frigo vert started to sort of stop becoming quite as relevant, and some of the board members moved on, the manager moved on, and in many ways it struggled to keep its clientele. We're still funded by the fee levy, so that subsidized the food and helped them do it, but more and more it struggled to keep its clientele and to keep its interest. So there was a sort of a shift that was happening away from Le Frigo Vert. So when we decided to launch the People's Potato in 1999, in fall 1999, we really wanted to try to enliven that community as well. So we actually offered it as a joint launch. And actually, the very first meal that we served in December '99 as a big community introduction to the People's Potato that was going to start the following January, we cooked it at Le Frigo Vert's kitchens. We brought it from Le Frigo Vert into the basement of Reggie's where we were going to serve the food. And we really wanted to try to kickstart Le Frigo Vert at that time. And it didn't work. It didn't work. So the People's Potato became a thriving success. We had hundreds of volunteers, literally, and hundreds of people, and lining up for the food. And the distinction between the volunteers and the people who used the service was minimal. People knew to show up at our kitchen at 11:45 to bring these steaming pots of food across. People knew to come to our kitchen to volunteer there. But Le Frigo Vert continued to kind of operate under the radar. We did a lot of, we ordered through Le Frigo Vert some of our goods, but it didn't really feed into the equation in the same way. And then in the summer of 2000, the manager at that time quit. He didn't want to continue, and there wasn't really a board. There were a few people who were left holding the reins of Le Frigo Vert, but they weren't people who felt like they wanted to re-energize it, let's say. So we kind of created a new board. We went out and found some people who would be interested in revitalizing Le Frigo Vert. There are a couple from Global Action Network, Andrew and Rebecca, for example. There was a local sort of celebrity chef, James Mays, and a few other people who from the community who said, yeah, this is an important institution. This is an important health food store. Let's keep it alive. Let's re-engage the board. Let's hire a manager. We'll have a thorough hiring process. And so that was in through the summer of 2000. And by September 2000, they had a new manager in place. But there was a distinctive shift. And the manager who came in had a different expectation about what the store was and was going to be. So for the first time, Le Frigo Vert started to carry supplements and different kinds of pharmaceutical products, frozen and prepared meals. All these things were from a different ethic. This wasn't the ethic of the old Frigo Vert, this was a new ethic. They decided to get rid of the bulk bins, which had been a huge achievement for us in 1998 to acquire, being able to go from having maybe a selection of, 150 products to adding another 100. We doubled our product line, and then we were carrying bulk millet, bulk amaranth, bulk quinoa, bulk azuki beans, bulk buckwheat groats, like all these beautiful products that actually to us were the core of what eating was, and teaching people how to cook and teaching people how to use these products. We were able to carry all of them, and it changed how we understood education at the store and all these things. So when they decided to get rid of the bulk bins at Le Frigo Vert, and another mandate that they adopted for that store was to become strictly vegan. And while the People's Potato was vegan, I think there were a lot of people in the community who looked at that and thought, well, that used to be a place where I could get my local farm fresh eggs. And in Montreal at the time, that wasn't something that people were thinking about, but the people who were thinking about it, that was an enclave for them. So they lost, nice organic yogurt, they lost nice organic milk and nice organic cheeses and the organic eggs and these kinds of products that were meaningful to people. So it became a really different store. They spent a bunch of money and invested in a new alarm system, which was strange to us or to observers. But really, at that point, the thing that was really most noticeable and most characteristic of the change was the removal of the bulk bins. And out of the removal of the bulk bins came about the idea of having a Bolshevik revolution. And so what we did was we effectively approached the staff. And this was out of I was working as an individual with the People's Potato and with the community that we were mobilizing and that we worked with. So there was a very, very strong active contingent associated with the People's Potato, not just the collective itself, but also the community at large who understood what we were doing. And I'm going to take a step back and sort of explain a little bit how organizationally we were structured and how this Bolshevik revolution unfolded. So the People's Potato operated as the People's Potato, but we were actually self-identified as the Concordia Food Collective. And the Concordia Food Collective operated, or the People's Potato, which was the worker-run collective. So we kind of had this parent organization that was us, but we always envisioned the Concordia Food Collective being an umbrella for the People's Potato, which we operated, but other potential projects. So at that point, we developed the constitution of the Concordia Food Collective. And the constitution of the Concordia Food Collective was to be an organization, a not-for-profit organization that housed different project worker-run collectives that had a vision of radical food politics. So we approached the staff of Le Frigo Vert, and there were a number of outstanding, exciting, motivated staff members who were really disgruntled with the hierarchical structure and the overall direction, and really valued the idea of being an autonomous worker-run collective. And we mobilized a group of people who were generally interested in our project, the People's Potato, and the food security movement in general. And we petitioned Le Frigo Vert to have a special meeting. And in their constitution, it was prescribed that if a certain amount of members, and every Concordia student was a member of Le Frigo Vert, if they received a petition with a certain amount of signatures, they were required to hold a special meeting. So we petitioned to hold a special meeting, and at that special meeting, we had the board of Le Frigo Vert could consist of up to 12 people. So we had a full slate of 12 people who were the Bolsheviks, who were going to step up and say, yep, we're all running for board of director positions. The people who were on the previous board of Le Frigo Vert did not come to the special meeting. And so we elected a full slate of Bolsheviks to create a new Le Frigo Vert, a worker-run Le Frigo Vert that would be incorporated under the Concordia Food Collective as a sister organization to the People's Potato. So now the Concordia Food Collective is the parent organization that houses the People's Potato Project Collective and Le Frigo Vert. And then shortly thereafter, the People's Potato Project Collective had the People's Potato Serving Collective and the Community Economic Development Collective. So we're trying to, and working with understanding the legalities, like how do we organize ourselves? How can we spread an organizational structure that's going to be empower more workers, that's going to give more worker autonomy. And that's what we were trying to figure out. And also, our constitution was really, really overt and explicit in having really progressive hiring practices and policies, really enshrining non-hierarchical work structures, having good worker evaluation sort of processes, employment processes that made a lot of sense, and always made sure that those project collectives, though they were part of the umbrella Concordia Food Collective, always had the autonomy to do what they needed to do. So then there was a board, and there were the project collectives, and the Frigo Vert at that point became its own distinct identity, and were able to now make decisions about what they wanted to carry in their store. And so at that point, I'm pretty sure they ended their vegan policy, but I'm not positive about that. But it didn't matter because it became an autonomous, vibrant zone. And the employees who worked there were awesome, and they became part of the activist and food movement hub that existed. It was an amazing thing. Like really, almost from one day to the next, you went from an organization that was really under the cloak of a different administration's policies and ones that weren't necessarily humanistic, and certainly those policies weren't what the employees who worked there then wanted to carry out, to being in a situation where they were fully autonomous to do exactly what they wanted to do. And it regenerated a lot of energy and interest in Le Frigo Vert. And thereafter, the People's Potato did their thing, Le Frigo Vert did their things. We worked in collaboration a lot, obviously, but we were both vibrant organizations that had a very symbiotic relationship, and that wasn't possible with the previous administration. So thereafter, all of our community economic development products were obviously found at Le Frigo Vert. So that was, our baby food, our canned goods, our cookbooks, our baked goods. They all became a very important staple of Le Frigo Vert's goods.